They got a little election surprise over in Turkey this week. The opposition claims big city wins in blow to Erdoğan. Okay, so you know what's strange about this to me? I've been hearing for years in the media that Turkey is no longer a democracy. I can't imagine that if it's a dictatorship, they would allow the ruling party to be defeated. But apparently such was the case this week. Turkey's main opposition party has claimed victory in Istanbul and Ankara in local elections, inflicting the biggest defeat on President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan and his Justice and Development Party, the AK Party, in more than 2 decades. With more than 95% of ballot boxes opened in Istanbul on Sunday, Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu of the Republican People's Party said he had defeated the governing AK Party candidate by more than 1 million votes. Those who do not understand the nation's message will eventually lose, İmamoğlu, a former businessman, told thousands of supporters late on Sunday. Quote, "Tonight, 16 million Istanbul citizens sent a message to both our rivals and the president. In the capital, Ankara, CHP's Mayor Mansur Yavaş claimed victory over his rival, hailing the result as a, quote, clear message to those who rule this country. In total, CHP prevailed in 36 of Turkey's 81 provinces, state-run Anadolu Agency reported, making inroads into many AK Party strongholds. Opposition supporters gathered in Istanbul to celebrate the results, with tens of thousands of people lighting torches and waving Turkish flags. In a speech delivered from the balcony of the presidential palace, Erdoğan, who has governed Turkey since 2002, acknowledged that his party had lost altitude across the country and said he would self-reflect and rectify any mistakes. Quote, "We will correct our mistakes and redress our shortcomings," he said. In previous local elections in 2019, İmamoğlu won Istanbul's mayoral race, dealing Erdoğan and the AK Party their biggest electoral blow until that point. That defeat also struck a personal note for Erdoğan, who was born and raised in the city and served as its mayor in the 1990s. Sunday's local elections represent a new blow to the president, who had set his sights on retaking control of those urban areas. The nationwide local elections were seen by analysts and civilians as a gauge of both Erdoğan's support and the opposition's durability amid skyrocketing inflation and the crumbling of the Turkish currency against the dollar. Sinan Ulgun, director of the Istanbul-based İdam think tank, told the Associated Press that the surprising outcome was the result of voters wanting to punish the governing party over the state of the economy and described the elections as a watershed for İmamoğlu. He will emerge as the natural candidate of the opposition for the next round of presidential elections, Ulgun said. They had a big celebration. They were chanting, "Turkey is secular and will remain secular." The secular Social Democratic Opposition Party is leading in Ankara and across the country in a rebuke of Erdoğan and his Islamist right party. All right, so let's take a look at that. That was a pretty big crowd. So that is a pretty big turnaround. Turkey is a very complicated country because this Muslim party has been in control for 22 years. But my experience of the Turkish people and from researching Turkey, they take great pride in being a secular nation, in not being an Islamist nation. So a lot of Turkish people have always complained about Erdoğan, but enough liked him to keep him in power for this long And as I intimated at the beginning, I've seen a lot of Western media kind of implying that the country's not democratic, that he's a dictator, but clearly that's not true. He could not have gotten these election results. But it sounds like ultimately it was the economy that was decisive. But it's interesting that they were chanting that it's a secular country, because that is a point that a lot of Turkish people do take pride in, that they are not an Islamic state. Pete?
Yeah, I had some Turkish neighbors at an apartment complex, and I wasn't sure, if they were religious Muslims, but they invited me over to eat one time, and yeah, that guy could throw back beers like anybody, So so in terms of this outcome, it just seems like there are economic revolts all around the world. Right. And it seems like in 2016, you saw a lot of that all around the world with Brexit, with Trump. In 2020, you had a sort of restoration of the old guard. This economic turmoil is going to influence this year in a much more potent way than in these previous couple of cycles, because people are just being squeezed all around the world. And that's what really this was. This was a response to economic turmoil in Turkey. His sort of unorthodox approaches to fighting inflation have obviously not worked. And so you had this overwhelming result. That is probably going to happen most places around the world this year. And I don't think that whatever crises are in the works are going to be enough to put the people back under control, because I think a lot of people have learned their lesson from the last major crisis.
Yeah, it's interesting because the narrative tends to be towards a kind of populist right, as defined, Brexit and Trump and so on. And this seems to be a liberalization. Yes. We're moving away from an Islamic party towards a self-described socialist party.
Well, so much of what passes for the populist right is not very populist in practice. Right. And that's true here. And there's only so much you can fail before people catch on to that. And this is where I have come to the conclusion that electoral politics is a trap, because to call back to our previous segment, as long as it all takes place within a sort of Overton window, if you will, on a spectrum that has been narrowed by the people who are vying for office, then no matter who you put in office, you're more or less screwed either way. You need to bust open that Overton window. You need to stretch that spectrum out as far as you can. Only then will actual possibility through electoral reform be an option on the table. Because, what we've seen right here is a perfect example. You had Trump come in. What was it? Tax cuts for the wealthy. Now he's out. Now Biden is in. Biden promises all these things, doesn't deliver on a single one of them. No minimum wage increase, no paid family leave, nothing. Now we're going to give it back to Trump. What's he going to do with 4 more years? Probably not much of anything, which means, depending on, this is probably
but he'll be
going a little too far
doing
out.
Nothing.
He will be entertaining doing nothing. So depending on how frustrated people are at the end of those 4 years, maybe the Democrats win again. Maybe Trump's vice president gets in, right? We can't know that for now, obviously. But notice, one-term presidents are kind of rare. And it's looking like we're going to have, 3 in a row. We're going to have Trump for 1, Biden for 1, Trump for 1, and then he'll pass it off to somebody else. And if the Democrats win, that'll be, in a sense, a repudiation. So this all just strikes me as panic from people, justifiable panic under circumstances that are not as changeable as they may hope they are. Brazil, same thing. Lula, they throw Lula in jail. Bolsonaro gets in. They kick Bolsonaro out. They put Lula back in, right? There's just this sort of, back and forth between, these different ruling parties under a circumstance that is ultimately, I just think, gotten beyond the democratic control. The system is no longer responsive to any real democratic input, and that's certainly true here. I don't think you could say that that's not true here, but it seems more and more true all around the world, wherever you look. And so, obviously, we hope this works out for them. But I think you're seeing a level of panic in people that is going to make a lot of these cycles around the world very, very tough to foresee. And that's why I think you are looking at Trump coming back. And I think you're looking at a lot of outcomes that are going to strike people as quite surprising around the world. I mean, I don't follow Turkish. I don't follow their elections very closely, obviously. But judging by the coverage, this seemed to be a pretty big surprise to people who had their ear pretty close to the ground.
Well, it's interesting that it's a secular socialist party because today, largely with the help of media framing, people are given this impression that the Muslim world is inclined towards autocracy and was not able to modernize. But actually, that's because the British Secret Service, in conjunction with the CIA, whacked out their leaders anytime they tried to have a secular government. But a lot of the Arab world was moving towards a kind of secular socialism. So why does Turkey still have this tradition? Why hasn't Turkey been forced into a monarchy? Why didn't we ever install a Shah in Turkey? Oil. Countries that had democracies, you can't just steal their shit. It's much easier to deal with a king. It's much easier to deal with an autocrat than it is to deal with a democratic society. We could afford to have one in Turkey, so we didn't mess with their politics in quite the same way that we did in the rest of the region. So it is very interesting that that tradition does survive in Turkey, and it was something that was emerging in the rest of the Muslim world in the 20th century, but the West squashed it because they were afraid they couldn't control it in regards to their resources.
Yeah. And turns out in certain places it's a little harder to control than they thought it would be, which ushered in this, new century of warfare and turmoil.
So, hey, we have a new sponsor. You know what this stuff is? It's called colostrum. I looked into this stuff, right? This gives you a lot of health benefits. Go ahead, Google it. Go ahead, Google what it says. You'll like what you'll find. It's a lot of good stuff. And I got this right from MedPage, right? It didn't come from their website. It came from third parties. It's called colostrum. Well, this is the brand is Armra, and it's colostrum. And it's the first nutrition we receive in life, and it's an exclusive source of all the essential nutrients we need in order to thrive. A lot of people are taking this stuff now. A lot of people are. It's go good. Look, they've done studies. Amra colostrum. It's a proprietary concentrate of bovine colostrum. Go look what colostrum is. Go look what that is. That harnesses over 400 functional nutrients to strengthen your immune barriers against harmful particles from the environment that can trigger inflammation and make you sick. Colostrum has been known to strengthen immunity, ignite metabolism, fortify gut health, promote hair growth and skin radiance, and power fitness performance and recovery. Armra's premium grass-fed bovine colostrum, that's what this is. It's a concentrate that strengthens all 4 layers of your gut wall, where 80% of your immune cells are housed, and activates cellular health for your resilience and recovery. And get this, in clinical trials, it says that bovine colostrum was found to be at least 3 times more effective than the flu vaccine at preventing the flu. That's a big claim. But guess what? We worked out a special offer for you. For my audience, you're going to get 15% off your first order. Go look up what colostrum is, and then you decide. Go to try Armra, that's TRYARMRA.com/Jimmy, and enter Jimmy to get 15% off your first order. That's TRYARMRA.com/Jimmy. Hey, there's still tickets available in Stockholm, Oslo, Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, Cortland, New York, Oakmont, Pennsylvania, El Paso, Texas, San Antonio, Texas, Edmonton, Alberta, Vancouver, British Columbia, Denver, Ashland, Virginia, and Athens, Georgia. See you there.